50 Cent has been working on this documentary for almost 2 years. The footage he has is insane. The people he got speaking about Diddy is ridiculous.
Jay-Z, you're just like Diddy. I can't stand your arrogant, condescending attitude. Nicki posted a video of you wearing a pink wig, and I retweeted it. Nothing more. You deserved it. Everyone knows about our feud. It's been going on for over 20 years. I've seen all your manipulation in the industry, from power struggles to cultural control. In 2015, when Tidal launched, Nicki helped you build it from nobody to a successful platform, and you immediately pocketed her $7.9 million in royalties. Lil Wayne was qualified for the Super Bowl, but you kicked him out of personal grudges. How is that any different from Diddy forcing his artists to sign unfair contracts? Just because Nicki didn't align with him, he resorts to this kind of suppression. You're truly despicable. What's even more interesting is that right after I showed him and his father's photo in the documentary Sean Combs: The Reckoning, you immediately had your lawyer send me a warning letter saying I overstepped my bounds. When you wrote the lyrics to exonerate Diddy back then, why didn't you think about today? You say the film is malicious slander, but why don't you dare sue me for defamation? Because all the evidence I have is true. I haven't finished reporting the witnesses in my documentary, and I haven't released all the Tidal profit sharing documents. If you know what's good for you, pay back what you owe Nicki with interest. Don't wait until I make Jay-Z Reckoning 2, by which time even Beyonce's PR team won't be able to save you.
Jay goes, let's get it straight. Nobody's afraid of 50 Cent.
I want everyone to be clear. No one's scared of 50 Cent.
At that point, his safe presentation, even the glasses, what the glasses represent? Intelligence, right? A nerd, maybe. What are some of the things that come along with you being a nerd? Like, don't hit a guy before. He's not identifying with the transition and difference and the perception of Jay-Z. Now he's really safe, and people feel comfortable with him because they know he's not going to do anything inappropriate or try not to. Meanwhile, when he's saying he's not afraid of 50 Cent, why would you have to make that clear when no one's ever asked me if I'm afraid of Jay-Z?
Today is Friday, February 13th, 2026, and 50 Cent has just launched part 2 of his new Netflix documentary, a follow-up to the 4-part series he released on December 2nd, 2025. But this time, the tone is different. Secret parties, closed-door meetings, after-hours gatherings, private relationships, carefully managed public images. In part 2, 50 Cent revisits conversations surrounding Diddy and Jay-Z, focusing not on headlines, but on patterns. Patterns of secrecy, patterns of protection, patterns of silence. This documentary does not present verdicts. It raises questions. And according to 50 Cent, sometimes the most important stories aren't about what was said publicly, but what never left the room.
I uncovered every secret from the last 30 years, and I have given all the proofs of who was involved with Diddy. I have presented the videotape of Diddy's parties as evidence. Now no one can save Diddy and the other celebs. Jay-Z, after watching the rest of the documentary, you'll understand everything.
I am the fucking hardest hustler in the world. This is Savage Part 2. Don't tell me about shit. It's 2022 and I'm still a savage. Whatever I want, I get. Whatever I want, I fucking get.
In part 2 of his Netflix documentary, 50 Cent doesn't begin with accusations. He begins with environments. He revisits what he describes as private meetings. Meetings that never appeared on official calendars, never showed up in press coverage, and were never acknowledged publicly. Not industry panels, not award shows, not public collaborations, something else. According to the documentary's framing, these were gatherings held away from public view, not illegal by default, not confirmed as wrongdoing, but structured differently from typical industry events. Private rooms, private timing, carefully selected attendees. The emphasis isn't on spectacle, it's on control. 50 Cent suggests that access was limited and deliberate. Invitations weren't open-ended. There were no +1s posted on social media, no red carpet photographers, yet no recap articles the next morning. Closed-door settings where entry was restricted, familiar faces only, and perhaps most notably, no documentation, no press coverage, no official guest lists, no phones recording moments for later. In the documentary, these meetings are described as spaces where conversation stayed contained. What was discussed allegedly never left the room. There were no public summaries, no clarifications, no confirmations, just silence. 50 Cent frames these events not as isolated occurrences, but as part of a broader culture within powerful entertainment circles. A culture where influence doesn't always move publicly, where decisions, alignments, and understandings happen privately before the public ever sees the result. He doesn't present proof of wrongdoing. Instead, he focuses on structure. Why design an environment that leaves no record? Why emphasize privacy over visibility? Why ensure the same familiar faces are present repeatedly? The documentary suggests that documentation creates accountability, and when accountability is not desired, visibility is reduced. That doesn't automatically imply crime, but it does imply strategy. According to 50 Cent's narrative, these spaces were intentionally undocumented, not because secrecy itself is criminal, but because secrecy preserves leverage. When there's no official record, interpretation becomes flexible. When there are no photos, denial becomes easier. And in high-profile industries, perception is everything. The meetings no one saw weren't advertised. They weren't live-streamed. They weren't even acknowledged. Yet, according to the documentary, they mattered. Because in many cases, what happens privately shapes what appears publicly. Business decisions, alliances, social proximity, career trajectories. 50 Cent suggests that if you want to understand power in entertainment, you don't start on stage. You start behind the door, where timing is controlled, access is selective, and conversations are designed to disappear the moment they end. He leaves the audience not with conclusions, but with a question. If these meetings were harmless, why were they structured to leave no trace? And in a post-transparency era, that question carries weight, because sometimes the influential influential moments are the ones no one was meant to see.
That claimed, which we know wasn't true.
Yeah, check this out. We don't talk about things that are nonsense. We don't even entertain nonsense, my brother. So we're not even going to go there, with all due respect, but I appreciate you as a journalist asking. Thank you.
Because you listen, 7 years ago, I'd have been like, yo, did you hire somebody to kill Pac? But no, you do it like a journalist.
Yeah, no, I mean, we wouldn't even get into nonsense like that. You know what I'm saying? It's nonsense.
Which we never believed, by the way.
Yeah.
As part 2 continues, 50 Cent shifts the focus from meetings to something even harder to trace. After-hours culture. Not daytime networking, not public events, but late-night gatherings that existed outside normal media visibility. According to the documentary's framing, these were environments where public rules allegedly didn't fully apply. Not because laws were suspended, but because visibility was. No cameras, no official guest lists, no press coverage the next morning. These were not moments designed for public memory. They were moments designed to stay inside the room. 50 Cent describes an industry dynamic where influence often moved after midnight, in private lounges, secluded properties, and invitation-only spaces. Spaces where reputation mattered, but documentation didn't. In those environments, visibility dropped and control increased. The documentary emphasizes that these gatherings weren't always about scandal. They were about proximity, who was allowed in, who stayed, who became part of the inner environment. And according to the narrative, some relationships allegedly formed within those spaces. Relationships that never appeared publicly. Alleged romantic involvement is discussed cautiously in the film, not as proven misconduct, not as confirmed claims, but as examples of how private involvement can exist far away from public persona. Public image is curated, interviews are rehearsed, appearances are managed, brand identity is protected. But the documentary suggests that private environments sometimes operated independently of that image. Public persona versus private environment. And that contrast becomes central to this chapter. 50 Cent does not present evidence of wrongdoing. Instead, he highlights the pattern of separation, how personal associations could allegedly remain invisible while professional branding remained intact. In highly influential industries, perception equals currency. So separating the public from the private becomes a strategic. According to the documentary, some after-hours moments existed only in memory. No photos, no statements, no official acknowledgement that they occurred. And when something exists only in memory, it becomes difficult to verify or deny. That's where ambiguity lives. The emphasis here isn't about confirming accusations. It's about examining structure. Why do some environments function without cameras? Why are certain associations never acknowledged publicly? Well, why does public distance coexist with private familiarity? In the context of Part 2, 50 Cent frames after-hours culture as a hidden layer of the industry, one that shaped influence quietly. He suggests that to understand power, you can't only study what was published. You have to study what was never meant to be seen. Because sometimes visibility is not removed accidentally, it's removed intentionally. And once you understand that, the difference between public image and private reality becomes the most important part of the story. As the documentary moves deeper, 50 Cent approaches one of the most sensitive aspects of the conversation. Not with accusations, but with acknowledgement of long-standing whispers. He makes it clear, this is not about presenting verdicts. It's about examining perception. In Part 2, the documentary references uncomfortable discussions that allegedly circulated behind the scenes for years. Concerns about age gaps in certain private environments. Not public events, not official gatherings, but the same after-hours spaces described earlier. These were not confirmed reports. They were concerns. Quiet conversations that allegedly took place among insiders. Conversations that never became formal statements. According to the framing, the presence of significantly younger individuals at certain gatherings raised questions for some observers. Not proof, not conclusions, but discomfort. And discomfort, when left unaddressed, tends to grow. 50 Cent does not claim confirmed wrongdoing. Instead, he highlights how power imbalance can create perception issues, especially when environments lack transparency. The documentary suggests that in elite circles, access itself is influence. And when influence intersects with age differences, scrutiny naturally follows. Again, emphasis is placed on perception, not confirmed criminal findings. The film also touches cautiously on the idea of separation between public identity and private lifestyle. Public persona is managed carefully in high-profile industries. Image is curated. Narratives are controlled. But according to the documentary's discussion, private realities don't always mirror public branding. And that contrast between stage presence and private environment becomes a recurring theme. 50 Cent frames the issue as one of optics and accountability. In powerful spaces, even the appearance of imbalance can carry weight. Why? Because in environments already defined by secrecy, transparency becomes critical. If gatherings are undocumented, if relationships are unacknowledged, if access is controlled, then perception becomes powerful. And once perception shifts, it's difficult to contain. The documentary avoids definitive claims. It does not present legal findings. It does not state that crimes occurred. Instead, it underscores how repeated whispers, combined with private environments, create lasting suspicion. In high-profile industries, reputation can be both shield and vulnerability. Silence can protect image, but it can also intensify questions. This chapter ultimately focuses on sensitivity, on how certain topics were allegedly discussed quietly but never publicly confronted, on how age concerns, even when unproven, can shape narrative when secrecy surrounds them. Because sometimes a story isn't about what was legally established. It's about why certain conversations were never allowed to surface in the open. And in Part 2, 50 Cent suggests that when powerful environments operate without visibility, even perception can become a headline. In Part 2, 50 Cent turns attention to something more subtle than headlines. Proximity, not accusations, proximity. He explores what the documentary frames as alleged private celebrity connections, not necessarily illegal, not legally confirmed misconduct, but associations that appeared closer in private than they ever did in public. Powerful names moving together privately, public distance, private familiarity. That contrast becomes central to this chapter. In high-profile industries, appearances are carefully curated. Red carpet photos, interviews, strategic collaborations. Public image is not random, it's managed. But according to the documentary's narrative, some relationships allegedly operated beyond that curated layer. 50 Cent suggests that certain figures maintain public distance while privately maintaining familiarity. Not necessarily wrongdoing, but proximity that didn't always align with public narratives. Appearances were carefully managed, Who stood next to whom publicly? Who appeared in photos? Who was absent from certain events? In industries where perception equals power, distance can be strategic. Sometimes distance protects reputation. Sometimes it protects narrative control. The documentary cautiously references adult misconduct allegations that have circulated over time, not presented as proven facts, but as part of the broader public discourse. Important distinction: the film does not declare guilt. It highlights how allegations are often handled. When controversy surfaces, language becomes careful. Public statements are limited. Legal teams respond. Narratives shift toward distancing and brand protection. 50 Cent frames this as a pattern of image protection and narrative control. If allegations arise, proximity is minimized publicly. If scrutiny increases, appearances are adjusted. If public interest grows, access becomes restricted. And this isn't new to entertainment, but in the context of Part 2, it gains significance. Because once audiences become aware of controlled appearances, they start questioning what isn't shown. Why certain individuals are never seen together publicly, despite alleged private familiarity. Why public branding emphasizes separation. Why timing of appearances shifts during controversy. 50 Cent's argument isn't that proximity equals guilt. It's that proximity, when paired with secrecy and image management, creates questions. And those questions don't disappear easily. In powerful environments, narrative control can shape perception, but it cannot eliminate curiosity. The chapter ultimately suggests that celebrity proximity is rarely accidental. It is calculated, managed, adjusted as needed. And when patterns of controlled appearances repeat over time, even without legal conclusions, public trust can erode. Because sometimes the story isn't about what was proven, it's about how carefully the picture was framed. As Part 2 continues, 50 Cent shifts the focus again, this time toward what he describes as inner circles. Not headlines, not viral moments, but the people who are always there, yet rarely mentioned. The documentary discusses what it frames as unspoken connections surrounding Diddy and Jay-Z. Not direct accusations, not legal claims, but recurring proximity. According to the narrative, certain individuals appeared repeatedly in private settings. Familiar faces at exclusive events, private gatherings, and closed environments. Always present, rarely explained. These weren't official partnerships, where they weren't always public collaborators, yet their presence seemed consistent. The documentary suggests that influence doesn't only flow through contracts or press releases. It often flows through access, private inner circles, people who move quietly but remain close to power. And in high-profile industries, proximity alone can signal alignment. 50 Cent doesn't declare wrongdoing. Instead, he highlights a pattern. Some associations were neither confirmed nor denied. No formal acknowledgement, no direct clarification, no visible distancing either, just silence. And according to the documentary's framing, silence can function as protection. When relationships are kept off record, they remain flexible. If controversy arises, they can be minimized. If no scrutiny exists, they remain beneficial. That ambiguity becomes strategic. Whilst the same faces appearing repeatedly can raise curiosity, especially when there is no official explanation for their role. Are they advisors? Friends? Business associates? Something else entirely. Without documentation, interpretation becomes subjective. The film suggests that in elite environments, off-record relationships are common, not necessarily improper, but intentionally quiet, because public visibility creates accountability. Private familiarity preserves leverage. 50 Cent frames the issue as structural rather than personal. Inner circles aren't unique to one industry. They exist wherever power concentrates. But when those circles remain unexplained, they naturally invite speculation. The documentary avoids declaring guilt. It does not present legal findings. Instead, it examines how consistent proximity combined with silence can create lasting questions. And in today's climate, where transparency is increasingly demanded, unexplained inner circles feel more significant than ever. The core idea in this chapter isn't accusation. It's access. Who is always present? Who is never publicly identified? And why certain associations remain permanently off the record? Because sometimes in powerful spaces, what isn't clarified becomes more powerful than what is. As the documentary moves forward, 50 Cent expands the focus beyond individuals and towards something broader: alliances, not public partnerships, not official collaborations, but what he frames as alleged behind-the-scenes coordination. According to Part 2, the music industry has always operated on layers. What audiences see publicly, competition, a rivalry, distance, doesn't always reflect what happens privately. Public separation, private alignment, that contrast becomes central to this chapter. 50 Cent suggests that certain figures may appear distant in interviews or disconnected in public branding, yet maintain quiet alignment behind the scenes. Again, not presented as proven misconduct, but as a pattern of coordination that allegedly exists in powerful spaces. The documentary emphasizes that influence in entertainment isn't only about talent or chart positions, it's about networks. Who protects whom? Who defends whom? Who remains silent when controversy surfaces? Silence in this framing becomes mutual protection. If one figure faces scrutiny, others may choose distance publicly, but not necessarily sever ties privately. If accusations circulate, if statements are often minimal, careful, controlled, and according to the documentary's narrative, that restraint isn't random. It's strategic. Persistent accusations, even when unproven, don't always disappear. They fade. They resurface. They get reframed, but they rarely collapse completely. 50 Cent highlights how certain questions never fully went away after Part 1 of the documentary. Conversations continued online. Speculation persisted. Observers kept connecting patterns. Part 1 raised issues. Part 2 revisits them. Why now? The documentary suggests timing matters. Public awareness has shifted. Audiences are more skeptical of surface-level narratives. Transparency is demanded more than before. So Part 2 returns to the same unanswered questions. Not to provide verdicts, but to explore why they remained unresolved. 50 Cent frames this not as an attack, but as an examination of structure. How alliances function quietly. How protection can operate through omission rather than defense. How silence can sometimes be louder than denial. The key theme here is coordination. Not necessarily illegal, not necessarily conspiratorial, but aligned. When powerful individuals operate within the same ecosystem, mutual interest can create unspoken agreements. Stay quiet, avoid escalation, preserve brand. The documentary doesn't claim documented proof of secret deals. Instead, it analyzes behavior patterns. If multiple controversies surface over time and responses remain minimal, that restraint itself becomes noticeable. Why didn't certain figures address specific claims directly? Why did some questions go unanswered? Why did narratives shift without clarification? While Part 2 suggests that sometimes what protects reputations isn't confrontation, it's coordination. And when alliances remain hidden but effective, the public may never see them, only the results. This chapter ultimately asks a simple but powerful question. If accusations never fully disappeared, why were they never fully resolved? And why, years later, are those same questions still being revisited? As Part 2 approaches its final stretch, 50 Cent shifts the lens from public narrative to private influence. Not what was said publicly, but what allegedly operated beyond public scrutiny. The documentary references unconfirmed associations, connections that were never formally acknowledged, yet reportedly existed within private environments. These were not official partnerships, not public collaborations, but relationships that insiders allegedly understood, even if audiences did not. According to the film's framing, some relationships were quietly removed from public narratives over time. Appearances changed, mentions faded, distance became visible, even if private proximity allegedly remained. Again, no legal conclusions are presented. Instead, the focus is on structure, influence controlling access, who enters certain rooms, who receives invitations, who is kept outside. Access in powerful industries is currency. The documentary suggests that private spaces function differently from public ones. There are no reporters asking questions, no cameras documenting interactions, no accountability mechanisms built into the environment. Inside those spaces, hierarchy becomes clearer. Who has authority? who has influence. Who depends on proximity? 50 Cent explores how access can translate directly into leverage. If someone controls entry into exclusive environments, they control opportunity. And when opportunity is scarce, leverage increases. The film cautiously references concerns raised among insiders about significant age gaps in some environments, again framed as perception and discomfort rather than confirmed wrongdoing. The emphasis is not on declaring crimes, but on examining how imbalance can shape power dynamics. In any setting where one side holds influence, reputation, or career opportunity, and the other side seeks access, imbalance can exist. That imbalance doesn't automatically imply misconduct, but it does create vulnerability. According to the documentary's narrative, private spaces amplify that imbalance. Without visibility, a power becomes less challenged. Without documentation, interactions become harder to interpret later. Power dynamics operating beyond public scrutiny can shape outcomes quietly. Careers can be influenced, opportunities extended or withheld, associations formed or erased. And when certain relationships are allegedly removed from public history, when interviews avoid mention, when past proximity is minimized, audiences begin noticing patterns. Why was this person present for years and then suddenly absent? Why were certain connections never publicly explained? 50 Cent frames this not as a courtroom argument, but as a structural observation. Access equals leverage. Leverage equals influence. And influence, when operating privately, can shape narratives long before the public sees the final version. In this chapter ultimately emphasizes that power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's selective, and sometimes it operates entirely inside spaces the public was never meant to enter. As Part 2 reaches its conclusion, 50 Cent steps back from individual names and focuses on something larger. A system. Not one person, not one event, not one allegation, but a culture. The documentary addresses long-standing industry whispers, cautiously, not as proven crimes, not as verified court findings, but as conversations that have circulated quietly for years. Conversations about powerful environments, about access, about influence, about vulnerability. According to the film's framing, certain concerns were never loudly confronted. They were discussed in private, repeated among insiders, dismissed publicly, asked then resurfaced again later. Patterns. That word becomes central. Patterns repeating over years. Similar accusations resurfacing, similar denials, similar silence. The documentary suggests that silence can serve multiple purposes. Sometimes it prevents chaos. Sometimes it avoids legal exposure. Sometimes it protects brand value. But sometimes silence protects systems before it protects people. 50 Cent doesn't declare guilt. He doesn't present court rulings. Instead, he raises a structural argument. When industries prioritize reputation over transparency, silence becomes a mechanism of control. Concerns about vulnerable individuals in powerful environments are referenced, not as confirmed misconduct, but as recurring themes in public discourse. The film suggests that imbalance within elite spaces can create discomfort that lingers, even without formal charges. And when discomfort is repeatedly ignored, it turns into suspicion. Part 2 frames this moment as different. Because culture has shifted, audiences are more skeptical. Social media amplifies whispers. Transparency is demanded. What once stayed contained inside private rooms now struggles to remain hidden. The documentary suggests that pressure builds over time. Each unanswered question adds weight. Each avoided clarification increases curiosity. Eventually, silence itself becomes the loudest statement. 50 Cent implies that systems, not just individuals, learn to protect themselves. They adapt. They control narratives. They manage appearances. They minimize exposure. But when scrutiny intensifies, even well-protected systems feel strain. The final moments of this chapter don't offer a conclusion. They offer a question. When silence finally breaks, what does it reveal? Does it expose wrongdoing? Does it expose exaggeration? Or does it simply expose how power operated behind closed doors for years? Part 2 leaves viewers with that uncertainty. Not a verdict, not a declaration, but a tension. Because sometimes the most important story isn't about what was proven. It's about why it took so long for anyone to speak at all.